First Crossing by Pam Muñoz Ryan. Revolution Boulevard in downtown Tijuana swarmed with gawking tourists who had walked over the big cement bridge from the United States to Mexico. Shop owners stood in front of their stalls calling out, "I make you good deal! Come in, I make you good price!" Even though it was January, children walked the streets barefooted and accosted shoppers, determined to sell gum or small souvenirs with their persistent pleas. "Come on, lady, you like gum? Chiclets? Everybody like gum." Vendors carried gargantuan bouquets of paper flowers, hurrying up to cars on the street and trying to make sales through open windows. It appeared that no one ever accepted the first rebuff from tourists. The Mexicans simply badgered them until they pulled out their wallets. With its shady border town reputation, Tijuana maintained an undeniable sense of mystery, as if something illegal was about to transpire. Marco added up the hours he had been riding on buses from his home in Xocotepec, Jalisco, in order to reach Tijuana. 18 hours? 23 hours? It was all a blur of sleeping and sitting in stations and huddling as close to his father as possible so he wouldn't have to smell the sweat of strangers. Now, even though they were finally in the border town, their journey still wasn't over. Papa pointed to a bench in front of a liquor store, and Marco gratefully dropped onto it. Even though it wasn't dark yet, a neon sign flashed tequila and Kahlua in the liquor store window. Marco felt conscious of himself, as if everyone who passed by knew why he was there. For some reason, he felt guilty, even though he hadn't yet done anything wrong. "No te apures, don't worry," said Papa, reaching into a brown bag for a peanut. He calmly cracked and peeled it, letting the shells drop onto the sidewalk. Marco looked at him. Papa had an eagle's profile, a brown, bald head with a bird of prey nose. Once, when he was a little boy, Marco had seen a majestic carved wooden Indian in front of a cigar store in Guadalajara and had said, "Papa, that's you!" Papa had laughed, but had to agree that the statue looked familiar. Marco looked just like Papa, but with 10 times the hair. They had the same walnut-colored skin and hooked noses. But Papa's body was muscular and firm, while Marco's was skinny and angular, all knees and elbows. "How do we find the coyote?" asked Marco. "Do not worry," said Papa. "The coyote will find us. Like a real animal stalking its next meal, the coyote will find us." Marco took off his baseball cap and ran his fingers through his thick, straight hair. He repositioned the hat and took a deep breath. "Papa, what happens if we get caught?" "We have been over this," said Papa, still cracking peanuts. "We will have to spend a few hours at the border office. We stand in line. They ask us questions. We give them the names we discussed. They take our fingerprints. Then we come back here to Tijuana. The coyote will try to move us across again, tomorrow or the next day or even the next. It could take 2 attempts or a dozen. Eventually, we make it. It's all part of the fee." "How much?" asked Marco. "Too much," said Papa. "It is how it is. They are greedy, but we need them." Stories of danger. Marco had heard stories about coyotes, the men who moved Mexicans across the border. Sometimes they took the money from poor peasants, disappeared, and left them stranded in Nogales or Tecate with no way home. Coyotes had been known to lead groups into the desert in the summer, where they would later be found almost dead and riddled with cactus thorns. And then there were the stories about scorpion stings and rattlesnake bites after following a coyote into a dry riverbed. Just last week, Marco overheard a friend of Papa's tell about a group of people who hid in a truck under a camper shell, bodies piled upon bodies. The Border Patrol tried to stop the truck, but the coyote was drunk and tried to speed away. The truck overturned, and 17 Mexicans were killed. Since then, Marco's thoughts had been filled with his worst imaginings. Papa saw the wrinkle in Marco's forehead and said, "I have always made it across, and I wouldn't keep doing this if it wasn't worth it." Marco nodded. Papa was right. Everything had been better for the family since he'd started crossing. His father had not always worked in the United States. For many years before Marco was 10, Papa had gone to work at a large construction site in Guadalajara, 30 miles away from their village of Xocotepec. 6 days a week, Papa had carried 50-pound bags of rock and dirt from the bottom of a crater to the top of a hill. All day long, up and down the hill. Marco had asked him once, "Do you count the times you go up and down the hill?" Papa had said, "I don't count. I don't think. I just do it." Papa's frustration had grown as the years went by. He was nothing more than a burro. When the hole in the ground was dug and the big building finished, he had been sent to excavate another hole. And for what? A pitiful $5 for his 9 hours? The day that one of Los Jefes spat on his father as if he was an animal, Papa set the 50-pound bag down and began to walk away. The bosses laughed at him. "Where are you going? You need work. You better stay." Papa turned around and picked up the heavy bag. He stayed for the rest of the day so that he could collect his pay and get a ride home. But he never went back. He told Mama, "My future and the children's future are marked in stone here. Why not go to the other side? There, I will make $30, $40, $50 a day, maybe more.